Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. This evening, we have one of our favorite guests. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. We know her as our clinical, organizational, and forensically trained psychologist. She is also the president and co-founder of A.M. and Associates Incorporated. She is the president and founder of Celeste Productions Incorporated. She is the immediate past president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation Board. She is also a trustee of the Michigan Health Council. And not only that, she is also an author and musician. Good evening, Dr. Angie. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. Good evening, Kim. How are you?
I am great. So let's get right to our topic. So tonight, guys, we are talking mental poise because in the last couple weeks, we went from Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson to Will Smith and Chris Rock. And, you know, for those that don't know, Chris Rock cracked a joke at the Oscars. And I will say it's crude. I thought it was. And Will Smith apparently saw his wife's face. We'll talk more about it. Saw his wife's face is what I believe, and got upset and saw the pain. And had a snap moment and got up and smacked or slapped Chris Rock straight in the face on live television at the Oscars on the big stage. I believe it's at the Kodak Theater. And it was shown around the world. But I want to go back to Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson. A lot is talked about when we watched her 4 days of going through the hearings. There were things that were said to her that were totally inappropriate. She was challenged on her record over and over and over and over again on the same questions. There were mischaracterizations lodged against her. One particular case, and I'm going to talk about it. This was Congressman Holly, went after her about a individual who she gave 3 months to. The case, which I don't know if she had the paperwork in front of her or had the case file in front of her, she said she did not. So we'll take her at her word. That individual has since come out. They have found him, as they do in everything in social media now. And this young man was struggling with being gay. He said he came from a very traditional and conservative family. He had no one to talk to. And so he went online looking for information on this particular issue with him. Why was he attracted to men or boys? And at the time, he was a teenager. And what ended up happening, he, I guess, collected 20 or 25 pornographic pictures. The ruling that Ketanji Jackson gave is that she said she did not believe, I believe what she said was she didn't believe he was a pedophile. And she did not believe he was a trafficker. So she did not cite him for distribution or production, which means filming, finding kids to abduct, things like that. He didn't have anything. This was just something that he collected. He didn't share it with anyone. I don't know how they found this out, but however they found out, went to trial. As you go through the legal system, everyone makes recommendations on what they think your punishment should be. Judges in their purview are allowed to either go up or down or somewhere in the middle. She decided to give this individual 3 months. And Congressman Hawley kept saying, do you regret it? Do you regret it? Do you regret it? And at a certain point of being battered over the same question, she says, I've answered that question. I'm going to stand on my answer. She didn't get up and yell. She didn't scream. She didn't throw a hissy fit. She didn't throw a pen or a pencil, because I probably would have threw a cup at him and said, you asked me that question one more time and we're going to be fighting in here. So I'm not. But I'm just saying, she didn't flinch. Her, you know, for some of us, I don't have a poker face. And so
you said you don't have a,
I don't have a poker face.
Oh,
So
poker face.
I don't have a poker face. So if I'm angry, guess what? You're going to see it on my face. If I'm happy, you will see it on my face. If I'm sad, I'm not one of these people who can be stoic and strong and not cry. I probably will cry. I probably will be angry, and I may not necessarily say anything to you, but from my facial positioning, you will see there is something wrong. We never saw that with Supreme Court nominee Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. We never saw that. Her eyebrow never went into her hairline. As I joke, for some people, you see that, you'd be like, yep, they had a problem with that because their eyebrow went up in their hairline, or their mouth drops open, something that is so visual, you know that you have offended someone. So I've given you a lot of background, Dr. Angie, but first, will you define what mental poise is and why particularly it is important for Black America, but specifically for Black women?
Well, mental poise is, it's not a, I would say it's not a formal term in the field of psychology, but it definitely is a valid term. I love that you use that because poise of any kind, just that idea of poise has to do with being able to maintain composure, being able to collect oneself, particularly in challenging situations, being able to hold one's temper, being able to just, maintain a certain temperament. And we know that if you did watch the 4 days or any part of the 4 days, her temperament was something that kept coming up. People kept, as they commented on what was going on, journalists and others were consistently saying, she has the temperament of a Supreme Court judge. This is the kind of temperament we would want to see. Someone who is measured. She was measured. She was careful in her answers. She maintained, like just as you described, her eyebrows go up, and you're allowed to have an eyebrow arch. It's, a little here, a little there, a little expression, but and still be considered poised. But she definitely exhibited such mental poise. Poise in general, meaning all those things. And then if we want to think of the mental part, that she did not betray or say or let come out of her mouth any of the thoughts that may have been going through her head as she was being, let's face it, insulted, rudely treated, and disrespected.
Yes.
And whatever her, if she had any pushback against that, mentally, she kept her composure, so that she was able to maintain more than enough mental clarity during those trying 4 days, that she was able to answer the questions, not only to the best of her ability, but in ways that really showed her genius, her preparedness, and her mental poise, and her mental and physical poise, all of that. So yeah, I would define it as all of those things, the composure and all of that. And then in addition, mentally being able to collect herself and stay focused and clear-eyed on what she wanted to present about herself, and having the mental poise to not allow them in their rude and disrespectful questioning to push her off her game, off of her square, as some people would say, or, they could not get a rise out of her. So she was very, very measured and very much in control of the situation, and gave us, if you watched any part of it, gave us a wonderful education along the way, and taught us more about the judicial system. And talk about mental poise. I mean, she was able to break down such complicated concepts in ways that we, the lay public, could understand. So she just embodied all of that.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
She really did. She did. You asked, why is this important for Black people, and particularly Black women?
Yes.
It's important for Black people. And I think before I say why it's important for Black people, I think it's important to clarify what we mean by that, because I can understand Black folks, some who might take offense to say, as some people have at times. I don't have to change who I am. I don't have to pretend just because other people are looking at me. I don't have to be quote unquote fake and not real, meaning showing my true feelings. I don't have to sit on that or hide that just to please someone else, etc. We don't mean in any way, or if I may speak for both.
Yes, please. You're correct. Yes, you're correct.
We don't mean in any way that we're encouraging Black people in or anyone to be, quote unquote, fake or phony or not authentic. But what we're talking about is the importance of knowing when to show it and how to show it. For Black people, frankly, for anyone, it's important for anyone to be able to practice and hone the ability to be poised, particularly in challenging, heated situations, for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is you're going to need to call on that if an emergency comes up. If you need to call 911, if something happens, you want to practice not panicking and being as much in control. We're not perfect, we're not robots, but as much in control of your thoughts and actions as you can be, to be able to get the most positive outcome that you can when you don't have a lot of time or when there's an emergency, et cetera. So there are a lot of good reasons for developing and maintaining and practicing mental and physical and just poise in general. It can affect your career, how people view you, your reputation, all of that. And that's for anyone. So if we think of those things in terms of Black folks, Black people, we're coming up against just centuries and such a history of, what is the term? Really just trying to rip down our everything about us, but
the stereotypes.
The stereotypes, absolutely. And just trying to take apart every part of us and make it look as though who we are as Black people are unhinged, dangerous, unpredictable, can't be trusted. We just could go on down the list, just wild animals, just down the list. So since that's something that's already, unfortunately, certainly not in everyone's mind, but because that kind of typing is out there, continues to be out there, and people try to perpetuate those kinds of ideas about us, it's especially important for Black people to keep that in mind, not only for each of us individually, but also because of how it can affect all of us. And at the same time, we don't want to say, well, what one does, each person is responsible for him or herself, which is true also. But we historically also come from a collectivistic society, which is a little different than American society. We have both. So as Americans, we have an individualistic society, each person for herself, himself, kind of that individualized, thinking, pull yourself up from your bootstraps. But our heritage as African people in the diaspora is a very collectivistic culture that we come from. And we carry that with us, even as African Americans and Black folks in America and everywhere. And that means I am responsible for you, you are responsible for me. We carry and hold each other up, or we tear each other down. So for Black people, it's especially important because there's already such an idea out there about us as not having poise, which has never been true, and not, just being unhinged, basically. So, and then you, of course, you add the Black woman part of it, and women from all different backgrounds, particularly in a patriarchal society, can relate to the, again, stereotype, perfect word that you used, that idea that women are hysterical. Yes. Women come unhinged at the slightest anything. If we do emote as human beings, because humans are designed to have emotions and to express them, which is actually a healthy thing. But because of those stereotypes against women and again, years and decades of folks trying to put women in a box to say that you're either an emotional human being or you can handle business. You're either an emotional, women have been accused and called hysterical, unjustly, or you are composed and you're able to, deal with the whatever's going on at the time. So definitely Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson had, all of that in the backdrop of her presence at that table. And she, I would say, represented herself and judges everywhere and women everywhere and Black women everywhere and Blacks everywhere very, very beautifully, because she knew why she was there.
Yes.
And she understood that it was not just about her. And she expressed this. It's about people who will come after her. It's about other girls looking at her who are already imitating her and look up to her. So she knows she's in a position of leadership. She knows she's being watched by more than just the men on the panel and men and women on that panel. Mm-hmm. And she took that responsibility very seriously. And that's something else I would say too, to Black folks and to Black women, that it is responsibility, because we're helping to pave the way for next ones coming behind us.
Absolutely. And you're so right, because I go back to politics. When we have elections and we have women candidates, we've had candidates who've cried before, and it turned into something, she's crying. And I thought, okay, why is that such an issue? Mm-hmm. Or you have women who will report they can be upset or saddened by something, but you can't show it because, as you said, you can either be overly emotional or you can be good in business. And it was just interesting watching how they were framing Supreme Judge Jackson as this woman. But then from the congressional side, they made it seem like she, was this person who was haphazard with the law, didn't really understand. But every person, from her high school classmates to her best friends, who are all very successful in high profile positions, to her husband, to her daughter, all of these people could attest to the person that she was. And I was moved by one gentleman who was from her high school, I believe her high school debate team. And he said, Katanji's never said a bad thing about anybody. I've never heard her say a bad thing about anybody. And it was just interesting watching people, because it was like everybody that came up there that was there for her was defending her against the brutal attacks that we had watched for 4 days, where she had been mischaracterized. You had a congresswoman, I believe it's Marsha Brayburn from Georgia, who said, can you define what a woman is? And I thought, are we really having this conversation? This is one woman talking to another woman, and I want you to define.
Right.
Oftentimes Black women, we are told that because of the color of our skin, that we have the additional burden of dealing with the stereotypes and connotations. Can you talk a little bit, Dr. Angie, about some of the things that Judge Jackson may have been taught that helped her get through this? Because I really think she showed us a master class in how to handle a situation.
Absolutely. Well, one thing though, I just want to comment on before I answer that part of your question. What you just said, I just wanted to echo, as you said, that, she was really being attacked so much that the people who were there in support of her they were there to support her anyway, but they just felt compelled to do so even more vehemently because she was being attacked in the way that she was. And I think it's important to remind the audience and all of us that is not the norm, because those confirmation hearings are not designed. The intent is not to treat even the most unqualified, and she is, as provably, as people have said over and over again, provably on paper, let alone when she just opens her mouth and her record, the most qualified.
Yes.
And what's really interesting too is you'd have to go back to someone who just happens to be another Black Supreme Court justice, who was our first Black Supreme Court justice, Thurgood Marshall. You'd have to go back there to him to find someone as qualified. But I just wanted to just comment on that she's not a defendant. And they were treating her as if she was a defendant on trial.
Yes.
They're there to ask her questions, get clarity. They can push back on some things, maybe they don't agree, whatever the case may be, but they're not to treat her as if she's a defendant who committed a crime. If they don't feel she's qualified, they can make their case and move on and not, the horrible shows that they put on, for those 4 days. So yeah, that inappropriate is just an understatement. It's not supposed to go that way, folks.
No, it's not. It's not. And let me add, I love the fact that she kept saying, but that's your job.
Yes.
That's your job. We can, as judges, we can only go by what the legislative branch.
Oh my goodness. I love it so much.
Authorized.
Exactly.
I said, get him. Tell him. Focus on his job. And stop worrying about, all this other cockamamie stuff that they were saying. But
I loved it.
Absolutely. So putting this in perspective, because where I'm trying to make a connection or a parallel to Will Smith and Chris Rock. Now, my personal opinion, I believe that this is something personal between the three of them. From what I understand, Chris Rock may have been saying some things. I know there's clips of him from 2016 saying things, but apparently there's some more stuff that I don't know if people have actually seen. I haven't seen it. This is just what people are saying. The fact of the matter is, you have a Black woman who is struggling with alopecia. Notwithstanding that, but she's shaven. She's not completely bald, but she's shaven. And we know that in America, hair is a billion-dollar industry.
Yes.
We have weaves, we have wigs, we have extensions, we have every kind of thing. If you want hair, guess what? If you're a man with male pattern balding, they've got treatments for you now, not just chemical. They actually can, I call it a male weave, but they actually can put hair on your head. Like what they do for women, it's sort of, they glue it on and it looks like real hair, and they're like, you can swim in it. And I'm like, wow, the things that we can do. This joke that was made, calling her G.I. Jane.
Yeah, Jane.
Now, I've had conversations with friends and everybody's like, it's just a joke. I said, I get that it's just a joke. It was crude. I said, but here's the thing. Black women and our hair, we have this precarious relationship. Either you have long hair or you have short hair or something in between. In the 1800s in Louisiana, they had hair codes for mixed women. You had to cover your hair in wraps or feathers because it was deemed that they were too attractive to the greater society at large. And because this is and I'm reading Isabel Wilkerson's The Cast, which is a wonderful read. And you don't want these people stepping above their station in life. So you have to make sure that they are put in their place. Fast forward to now, we have the Crown Act. And the Crown Act protects women or Black people as a whole, or anyone, from discrimination of hair. So if you have locks, if you wear your hair natural or some variation in between, someone can't say your hair is unprofessional and we're not going to hire you, especially if you have the credentials. And for our audience that's listening, that is an issue because there are people who've actually filed federal lawsuits because they had locks in their hair and they were fired from a position where they were told they could not be hired because other reasons, and it came out because they had locks in their hair. I say all that to say hair is very political. And for anyone that hasn't seen the clip, go back and watch it. When Chris makes the joke, you see Will laugh, and then the camera sort of pans away, and it's like in between him and Chris Rock. You see Jada's face right before the camera pans away. and you see her visibly angry, upset, hurt. And we don't know what happened. We don't know if Jada said something to Will, or if he looked at her face and realized, oh, my wife is hurt, and thought, okay, I'm going to handle this now, and got up and walked up on stage and slapped this person. Now, we just talked about Judge Jackson at a Supreme Court hearing to become a Supreme Court justice, and being mischaracterized, being called a liar, having people say, I really think you're a nice person, but I don't think you're qualified, when we just said on paper that you are, to millionaires or billionaires, however you want to say it, who have influence, power, and pull, and all in between, who could have settled this so many ways, decided to resort to violence. What are your thoughts on the correlation between the two? Do you see a correlation between the two, or am I pulling?
No, I don't think you're pulling at all, actually. Frankly, I think it's rather brilliant of you.
Thank you.
Really. If I do say so.
Well,
I do, because on the outside, I think to a lot of people, it can look like two completely different situations, and they may not have thought of, there are some who may have, but I think a lot of people may not have thought of a correlation between them and some kind of an association, but I think you're absolutely right. At the very least, if for no other reason than because what they have in common is the behavior in both situations took place in a public space.
Yes.
With cameras, with media, where all of us around the world can see what's going on, number one. Number two, both situations involved Black people. And both situations involve Black people dealing with insults.
Yes. Some
insult to one's own person or a loved one. Something that hit very close to home in each situation. And they both handled them, like you said, very, very differently. My thoughts about Will Smith and Chris Rock are actually similar thoughts that I had about the closer to home here. Was it the U of M coach?
Yes, Juwan Howard. Yes. Thank you.
I remember that, Juwan Howard. Similar thoughts. For those of you who may not know, Michigan, and it wasn't against Michigan State, I don't think, but one of our biggest college basketball teams, University of Michigan, their coach got into a physical altercation with the head coach, I think, of the other team.
I thought it was the assistant coach.
I think it was an assistant coach. Yes. I think you're right. Assistant coach. The assistant coach was a white gentleman. And I bring that up because in both with Will Smith slapping Chris Rock and with Coach Juwan Howard, from what we saw on the cameras and from what he did have a suspension for a few games or whatever after that. So it does seem that he instigated the physical fight that took place in that situation. In both of those situations, my first thought was about the youth. It's about kids and the example and how it damaged, in both instances, physically fighting in that public way. Not that we should sneak off and physically fight.
Right. No, absolutely. No. Right.
Now, I will say this so that, I don't want to sound like I'm, nice, some sophisticated nice. If I'm in an alley somewhere and I need to fight, I need to fight. For survival, to get away, to protect my, loved ones.
Don't get Dr. Angie in the alley now. Don't get Dr. Angie in the alley.
Okay. Don't do it. So the scripture says there's a time, there's a time.
There's a time and a place.
So yes, there's a time. There's a time sometimes for a fight, if you trying to get out where the getting is good or whatever you need to do to survive or whatever, protect. I understand all of that. But having said that, my mind, really in both instances went right to the young people, the young folks who are being raised And I thought how damaging that was to credibility. Kids take all that stuff in, and it's going to make it that much harder, not only for them, who I thought about Coach Juwan Howard, who's got, his own young guys, his own young college guys were pulling him away.
Yes.
And I thought in that, when it took place several weeks ago, I thought, and now what's going to happen when a couple of his guys are fighting and he comes and says, okay, guys, stop it, pull away. Why are you telling us to stop? Didn't you just do that?
Exactly.
Now, I mean, he can use it as a point of learning. He can say, you're right. You did see me do that and I shouldn't have, or blah, blah. You can still save it as a teaching moment. Perhaps, there's a way to do that. But that requires, and I'm not trying to teach him, but for any of us, that would require some real adult honesty.
Yes.
In which you say, I got overheated. I let my temper get the best of me. I want to tell you guys that's not okay. Whatever, but that requires that's an adult responsible comeback or reaction to your own behavior, because we're not perfect. Of course, we're not perfect.
No,
but yeah, and that's, the basketball team I think is a great example, but also same thing with Will Smith, because you have kids of all different backgrounds, black, white, whatever, watching both of these adults. So it not only makes it harder for them dealing with young people, but of course, everyone watching the next time when their kid does whatever the case, not to say that the media is raising them, but it has its influence. And, have your answers ready. Parents and guardians and teachers out there, when they say, well, Will Smith did it.
Right.
And he had to stand up for himself and he, blah, blah, blah. So you have your answers ready, because it can make it a little more difficult when you have adults in the public eye and Black folks in the public eye who, yes, it's true. It does fit those stereotypes, and not to say that we're living by a stereotype or not, like we're not living our whole lives just to fight a stereotype, but stereotypes are damaging. And we want to be careful that, first and foremost, I would say that you, as Judge Jackson did and demonstrated, that you compose yourself in ways that you can look back on and feel good about. Not that you're going to be perfect, you're going to make mistakes, but, to be a real responsible adult, to say, maybe this wasn't okay. So those were some of my first thoughts. There's definitely a tie and a correlation, because, like I said, they're in all these cases, they're in the public. You're dealing with Black people. With Judge Jackson, we're not inside of her head. I don't know at this moment, if you're going to compare who was more heated, who was more upset, Will Smith or her. I don't think that we necessarily need to weigh that in order to be able to say with some confidence that in both situations, for any human being, it would be very difficult to maintain your composure when you're being tested that way. But the importance, and so the importance, I would say the importance of her doing what Will Smith didn't do. And I will say this too. Some people could say, well, her position is different, which it is. He's an entertainer and maybe he has more room to do, whatever. There's also the fact, and that's something else too, the sexism within the Black community. Yes. So there's also the fact that he's a man doing it.
Yes.
And had a woman done it, might there be a greater temptation for, oh my gosh, she's completely unhinged?
Yes, there would have been. I believe so. I do believe so. Yeah. And contrast that with the conversations that are happening. So Jamel here wrote an article about America's having two different conversations about what happened with Will Smith and Chris Rock. And she was talking about prominent Hollywood people who were saying, Will Smith and Donald Trump are one and the same. That Will Smith.
I haven't heard that. Okay.
I won't say who said it, but it's in the article. It's in the Atlantic. So if you guys want to take a look at it, it's in the Atlantic. And it's a very good article. And then you have actors like Tiffany Haddish who praised Will Smith and said, someone who stood up for his wife. That's what we want. We want someone to stand up for us. And the contrast that I was really driving for. So we see Judge Jackson being grilled over and over again. Her husband is sitting behind her, stone-faced. Again, very similar disposition. We're not reacting. Our eyebrows aren't really moving. Our mouth hasn't fallen over. We haven't hunched over and grabbed our forehead or any of that. We're here in support of Judge Jackson. Will Smith, on the other hand, heard something terrible said to his wife and decided, I'm not going to let this fly, which leads me back to, I think it's more to it than what we know. But I just see the parallel that you have two husbands, despite one being Black and one being white, but two husbands who protected their wives and supported their wives in different ways. Because we see at the end of day 4, which I thought was a beautiful, or no, the end of day 3, I'm sorry, excuse me. The end of day 3, which I thought was a beautiful photo taken. We see Judge Jackson embraced by her husband, and he kisses her on her forehead. And what you see in that moment, what I thought I saw in that moment was he was like, we got you. Whatever these people are thinking, they're a liar. We know they're a liar. You know who you are. You're home, you're protected, you're safe. Where we see on the other side with Will Smith, he took his fist and did something violent, which to me was weaker than the powerful stance that we see with Judge Jackson's husband. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't do anything. He simply embraced his wife and kissed her on her forehead. And it's a picture that's traveled around the world. And every woman who's seen that I know that's seen it, like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I want a husband like that. And, you know, we all want that. You know, you want the person that you're with to take care of you, to protect you. We may not necessarily need them to protect us in the way that movies show it, where you have to have a gun or you got to punch somebody. But we want to know that in a moment of weakness, because when she got up on that third day after being grilled, you could see she'd had enough. And I don't know what her favorite food was. I would have loved to just sat with her and said, what do you think? We probably would have heard a whole lot of stuff. But whatever it was, for a brief moment, you saw her relax into the arms of her husband. And I wish that's what we would have seen with Will Smith, because I agree. Kids, this went viral. It's everywhere. It's a meme now. It's a joke. It's all over TikTok and everywhere else that kids see it. And everybody is making jokes and making fun of it at the expense of what happened, instead of really having a productive dialogue to say, how did we get here? How did we come to pass? And, you know, you and I have talked about the discourse that we have in this country. It's become very violent at times. It's become very disruptive. It's become very angry and boisterous. And so people are acting out. And so what I thought I saw at the Oscars was exactly that. You know, I agree. He is someone who is acting like everyone else that you see who's angry now. You know, invisible lines that were not allowed to be crossed. You know, people said to me, well, Kim, you plan events? I said, I do. I said, but you have to understand, at the Oscars, you wouldn't have security for the stage. Those are your top billed actors. You don't expect them to rush the stage. There's no purpose in that. They're going to have security to keep you and I out, because we're not supposed to be in there. I said, but for these people, you're talking about sitting next to Denzel and Oprah and all the rest of these other actors. I said, so now in society, we got to rethink, okay, well, even if they are a such and such, do we have to make sure that they're not going to do something? Are we going to make sure that our comedians, because and as a comedian, it was a crude joke, but that's what they do. Not saying that that was appropriate, but people make jokes at the expense of others.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my husband and I were having this conversation, and we were on the same page about this. We were both saying that I was saying to him, this idea of standing up for her, there are a few ways to do that.
Yeah.
And I was saying, he could equally and as strongly or more strongly, like, to your point, that was not the show of strength that Judge Jackson showed. A better idea that would not be damaging to kids, that would not, be damaging to a stereotype already in place about Black people, would be at one option is I would think perhaps accept the award out of his hands, go up to the podium, and before you say a word, address it right then and there. Yes. I am highly offended. Look, my wife is very upset. I demand an apology before we can go any further. And I'm serious about that. And I almost can 99.99% when they say that, when they see Will Smith, they might think he's joking at first, but he maintains that face and says, no, I'm serious. I expect you to come up here and you apologize to her and to my family. I guarantee pretty much he would have gone over and done that.
Yes. Yes.
That's that's taking care of your loved one. That is not letting him get away with it. And that is something that, that shows mental poise.
Yes.
So, and I wanted to say that because I know sometimes people will say, well, what else could he have done? Or, you can't let that pass. Or, well, he's got to stand up for her. All true. There are ways to do that.
Yes, there are.
There are ways to do that actually can be, even more impactful in a good way. In a good way. Yeah.
And I agree with you. And even if he didn't go up at that moment, when he got his King Richard Award, he could have addressed it right then and there and said, you know what? Thank you for this award, but the real award winner tonight is my wife. She is battling alopecia and people are making fun of her. And let me tell you about what this condition is. And you could have started a whole conversation around alopecia. You could have started a whole conversation around bullying. And I think it would have been a much more powerful statement. It would have shown Will Smith to be more, and I don't want to say that he's not mature, but because everyone makes mistakes, because in Hollywood, we have lots of people that I call bad boys who've done horrible things, and come back to have storied careers. Robert Downey Jr. is one, Rob Lowe is another. Absolutely. They both of them, Charlie Sheen, Charlie Sheen has his issues, but all three of them were drug addicts and just different things and got themselves together and now are highly accomplished actors. Will Smith, being who he is, could have, what I would have really liked to have seen is he could have taken a selfie with Jada and put it on Twitter. It would have blown up that he was so proud of his wife. Then text Oprah, because I'm sure she was somewhere in the room. She probably was sitting somewhere close to him and said, you know what, tomorrow we want to do an Oprah show. We want to talk about Jada and alopecia and why Chris Rock is willing. It would have been so much more. Now you have the situation where Chris Rock is benefiting from this because he's got a tour that's coming out and his tickets are skyrocketing in price. They said in Boston, his tickets are going for $800 to come and see him because everybody wants to hear. Everyone wants to hear. And I'm not suggesting that he can't make a living or do the things, but now it just seems like everybody's profiting from it. And the people that are hurt by it, not necessarily physically, but emotionally, because this is what they see, which are kids, and thinking, as adults have said, because kids will say, well, I have to have my respect, or I got to get my respect, or I got to, as you said, I got to show them who they're dealing with. You don't have to do any of that. You just need to be able to show up and be authentic for yourself.
Yeah. And, a couple of things. One is I totally agree with you, especially being authentic for yourself. But one thing I thought about is no disrespect to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
But it for Will Smith in his own mind, he may have thought that was being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Enough with the, I know I've got the suit and tie, the tux on or whatever, but I've got to be who I really am and stand, that could be part of the thinking. That's one thought I have. Another thought I have is I think I know for a fact, if they did an Oprah special or something, it would just like go.
Yes.
He may also have been thinking, which I could understand, we may do that tomorrow, but for the rest of this night, her night is ruined.
Mm-hmm.
She's devastated. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that that's what he, should have done, but I do understand both. I mean, I understand wanting to do something in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I would discourage the violence, but to address something, in that moment, and still, and do the Oprah, or whatever thing is. But I was frowning because because it's unfortunate that this is like, what makes it skyrocket. But I didn't know that the tickets were. Well, now, did I imagine this? I may have dreamed this. I mean, I saw it on Twitter, and I don't know if someone like did this as a mock-up to say this is what he could have said, or did Chris Rock actually post an apology?
Yes, he did.
Because I was gonna say, because I read it. I'm like, okay, so that really was from him. That's right. Yeah, he said he crossed the line and all of that.
Yes,
yeah,
he did. He said I'm paraphrasing. He hurt his friend's feelings, and he was hoping that with conversations, Will Smith made an apology and said his actions, were wrong.
Oh, I didn't see that too. Okay.
Yes, and Will Smith did his first, I believe, and then Chris Rock was after that. I mean, I think it's great, but I also think that people place celebrities on a pedestal and think that they all get along and everybody's friends, and sometimes you just don't like somebody, and it just is what it is, and you just need to let it go.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. But I am glad that they both did that, because that's something that you can point to with kids. That as adults who made mistakes, that they could own up to it. That's the strength. And I am glad to hear that. Exactly. But that's something she's been struggling with. That's devastating. I can't only imagine how devastating that was.
Absolutely.
For her in that arena, in that public space. He just needed, just leave her beautiful head alone.
Yes. Because women
her material from someplace else.
Wait. We don't play about our hair. I'm just saying. Okay.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. That's right. I told somebody, I said, people, when they do your mama jokes, you can't talk about nobody's mama. You can't talk about nobody's hair. It just doesn't.
These are the rules.
Those are the rules. Yes.
Those are the rules.
We don't do
They
that.
are the rules.
Yes.
Those are the rules.
But going back to being poised mentally. So one of the other things that I wonder too, if Will was just under a lot of pressure, this is a big Oscar for him. This was a big movie. It was an important movie because this is Venus and Serena. And, both of them have influenced tennis, have influenced sports as a whole, women's accomplishments in sports and fashion and other things. And they have become global leaders in terms of talking about mental health and bullying and what competition means and all of those things. And then he has a book. And I have actually read his book. His book is very good. His book is a New York Times bestseller. Oprah came out and blessed it and said, it was great. It really is a great read. And if you read it, you sort of have some background into who he is. And I have my ideas of actually why I think this happened. I think it has to do with his childhood. But he also has the reboot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah.
And so you have a hot TV show, this book that is just everywhere and everybody's talking about it. And now you're up for an Oscar. And on top of that, you have been the butt of jokes for over a year because remember, it was all about Jada and this musician that she had the affair with. And everybody was talking about it. And she brought him on the show and they've been sharing all their business. And people were like, okay, can y'all please shut up? We tired of hearing about you. And so maybe in that moment, he was like, okay, I'm sick of people talking about it. Take that example, Dr. Angie, and talk to us about how, as average, regular people in our own professional workplaces, our own family, because there's some of us in our families, you know, we go to grandma and granddaddy's house and grandma say, "Ooh, you done gained some weight." And you like, you know what, grandma, you got one more time before. Or your cousin or your sibling or whoever. And we talk about dysfunction and we're making fun of it. And I'm going to go back to my joke because, you know, in 1977, Dr. Angie, you took my red truck. I didn't forget. I did not forget my red truck. You got it. I'm not forgiving you for that. Next time I see you, I'm going to smack you.
Cancer, sisterhood.
But I say that to say, what can we do as average, ordinary people to maintain our poise, our mental poise? Because we all have situations where somebody is going to test you. Whether they say something to you, you get cut off on a, because I'm sorry, if you're driving in the Midwest, I don't know what's going on, but folks, you know, here go like 50 miles over the speed limit. Speed limit will be 70, and you're like, wait, are we doing 120? Is this the Autobahn in Germany? What's happening? You know, you're trying to stay with the traffic, and you're like, okay, I'm doing 95.
And I'm still not catching up.
And I'm still not catching up. What's going on? And so, you know, you go into restaurants, everybody is angry, everybody is short-tempered. You know, service industry as a whole, whether we're talking retail, restaurants, don't have enough staff. I've been in restaurants where it's been one or two waitresses, and one waitress will say, I got 10 tables. So I'm like, honey, go do what you got to do. This is what we need. Can you get us this? And we're fine. And, you know, and it'll be 30 minutes and they'll come back. Are you like, we're fine. We're okay.
And they sure appreciate you.
They sure, and that's what I'm saying. They do. Versus somebody else who's like, I'm here. You need to come wait on me, blah, blah. How do you keep your mental poise in some of these situations where the pressure is building and, you know, it's not good for us to crumble under pressure?
Couple things, 2 or 3 things. One is, I want to, as a starting point, I do want to return to Will Smith, just to offer this. You may be right in your speculations and what you think, you know, all that extra, and he certainly has a lot of pressure on him. But I would also, I would just add that he also has likely heard one too many things about her hair loss. Yes. You know, that could be enough because it hurts every time you hear somebody talking about someone that you love and that they're the subject of jokes and stuff like that. So that could have been a cumulative thing as well, in addition to, or, you know, I could just see my husband, you know, someone you really love, or vice versa. You hear something about them and it just pains you to your core. So I would offer that can be enough, not to justify, and he doesn't need me to justify or not justify, but to push you to want to do that, you know, to want to do that. So I would say that. Another thing I would say is that I always say that there are no such thing as ordinary average Joes and Josephinas. We are all extra.
Yay.
We're all extra. Yes,
absolutely.
Ordinary. But I know what you mean. People who are not, who don't have those platforms. Yes. So the extraordinary people who don't have those platforms, I think we all have to do the same things. And that is prioritize the necessary. Prioritize the necessary. Yes. Which is more important, potentially endangering your reputation and how you are viewed in the eyes of your kids, or being able to show a good example for them to follow. And that doesn't mean being perfect, but, as they both did, which I'm glad to see they did it in a public space, because it happened in a public space, both Chris Rock and Will Smith. When you do make a mistake, then, what is the priority? Say you're sorry, use it as a teaching moment for your kids, or, whatever the case is. So that prioritize the necessary is more than a slogan. I do think that is a key tool that we need to hold on to. Think about what's most important, because in a particular moment of harassment or whatever the case may be, you can lose a lot.
Yes.
You can really lose a lot with a wrong decision that may or may not be fixed, at least in the short term, with an apology. Mm-hmm. You can lose your reputation. You can lose your respect in the eyes of those you care about. You can lose your job and your financial security. There's a lot. And I mean, if we're going to take it to the extreme, you can lose your life if you go, to the extreme of violence or whatever. Mm-hmm. So definitely, and I used this term earlier, that idea of practicing composure, practicing mental poise. Different people have different personalities, different, characterizations and traits, not characterizations, but different characters and personality traits. It's easier for some people than others. Some folks are just sort of naturally chill. Mm-hmm. And they may be boiling under the surface, but it how different folks are. For some people, it takes a lot more for them to boil over or whatever, and for some people, they get to that place quicker and easier and sooner. But I do think it's to prioritize, on a daily practice, mental practice, how important is this? What's more important? That's one part of it. Another thing is, along those same lines in our daily lives, just as you were saying, most likely, or it's likely that for Will Smith, it was cumulative. Regardless of where that pressure was coming from. So that suggests that what's the term that we use when we're talking about all the diversity training now and all this stuff that goes on. I do a lot of diversity training and stuff. And we talk about the microaggressions that Black people often suffer, and also that women suffer too, as well. And I would add other quote unquote marginalized people with disabilities have to deal with microaggressions also, don't care as much about. And so those microaggressions, for those of you who may feel, sure, what are we talking about? It's those little quote unquote little statements. They're not always overt. They're not necessarily a big insult to your face, but sometimes people will say or do little things. Like, for example, body language. If a Black man or an Indian man steps on an elevator and you have a woman or white woman there and she kind of like moves away as if to suggest that you're dangerous. She never said anything to your face. She didn't call you out of your name in an insulting manner, but that's what we would call it's definitely it's rude. It's insulting. Is what it is. But we might call that a microaggression because you feel that, you can feel that. So the accumulation of microaggressions through your day, through your weeks, to keep it from getting to the point, of where you feel like you're going to boil over or do a Will Smith slap or something. You have to deal with it every day, deal with it as it comes. And that involves all of those positive tools that we talk about on a regular basis. Take a deep breath, exhale it out. Recognize that it's their negative issues. It's not yours. You don't have to take that on. If they're putting you down or looking you up and down as if you're less than, that doesn't mean you are. You don't have to accept that that's the case. So yeah, I think just that mentally and physically, emotionally, kind of letting that go and being aware. A lot of times we carry around that negative stress and don't realize we're carrying it around until it gets to a boiling point. So checking in, I think just daily checking in and even throughout the day, how am I feeling? Where am I? How am I, just as you check in on your loved ones, or how are you doing? What's going on? Are you okay? Check in with ourselves also. If you've had a particularly rough day, or even if you haven't, end of the day is a lot of times it's a good time while you're getting ready for bed or nighttime routine or whatever it is. If you have someone trusted there to talk it through, that can really help. Just thinking about it, letting it go, writing it down, talk about journaling, of course. But different ways to recognize if you're carrying extra stress that you're not aware of, and letting it go and putting it in perspective. Mm-hmm. As you put it into perspective, sometimes you realize that you are going to have to address it. Mm-hmm. But doing that work beforehand, that consistent, regular habit of checking in, how am I doing? What, and then you can sift through and prioritize what things I need to let go, and then what things I really do need to address. Mm-hmm. So that as you see them, it gives you time to do that homework, to work, to think it through. Well, how am I going to address this? What's a good pray about it? What's a good meditate on it? So that it doesn't sneak up on you. Yes. That you're working on it, and when you do need to deal with it. Sometimes what happens is, as you're working through it, mentally, or talking it through with someone you trust, how you might need to address some of these things. Sometimes you find that you don't have to do it after all. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's kind of taken care of for you, or someone else will step up and say, you need to stop doing whatever it may be. But I think just the regularity of letting stuff go, really prioritizing what's important to deal with and what's important to let go, recognizing that, just like to recap, recognizing that other people's negativity doesn't have to be yours. Mm-hmm. Really looking in the mirror sometimes, that's important too, and say, well, in that debriefing, that personal debriefing, and kind of checking in, sometimes you find maybe it is something I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's me. Maybe I need to check myself. But we're not going to get there. We're not going to see those things. We're not going to get those things addressed and answered in healthy ways if we're not asking. Right. So that's the main habit. Ask the questions, really look at it, see what's important to address. What do you need to let go? I think all of those things can help us keep from getting to the point at which you just do something or say something that you might regret, or text something or email something you actually send and wish you could take it back. All of that. Yeah. All of that. It can help with all of that. Yes. The invention of technology in terms of social media and email and all that makes it really hard when you're angry and you send something, you're like, oh wait, I probably shouldn't have sent that. Too late. It's out there now. What's a good idea to do? What's a good idea to do is if you want to type it, type it in a document. Type it right. Don't do it in the email format because your elbow could slip.
Exactly. It's not like mailing a letter and you're like, oh, wait, let me go get the letter. Like, no, sorry, you don't need to read this. No. Right. Exactly. That's so true. And also to also add for the wonderful judge, people can we leave this conversation without talking about Senator Cory Booker? Oh my goodness. Speak on it, Dr. Angie. Go ahead. Oh Lord! Wait a minute. Let the church say amen. Go ahead. Let the church say the doors they're not open. They're about to be open. Lord, God send. Yes. God send. Anyway, God send. Yeah. He knew that he was necessary. Yeah. She needed that valve, and he was in a position to do that, to speak to her about her value, and to just help her kind of like sweep away that negative spirit. He was just necessary. God bless him. God bless him for it. And I have heard a couple of people say my battery's low on my laptop. Let me plug it in. I heard a couple of people say, not a couple. It was one guy I heard in particular. And it was a talk radio show, call-in radio show. And most people that I deal with anyway, I'm very careful on my social media and stuff like that. I really tend to stay in positive spaces with supportive people. And if they're going to push back, they'll do it in a respectful way, kind of for the most part. But I was listening to a radio talk show, and a gentleman, and they were supportive of Senator Cory Booker very much so, and all of this. But the caller, his view was different. And he felt that he was highly upset because he felt that Senator Cory Booker spent his taxpayer, as he put it, taxpayer-funded time
pontificating on, his family background and blah, 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 and all of this he was saying. And they let him speak, the host let him speak. And the lady who was on there, I think she's an attorney or a legal expert in some way. I loved her response. And I just wanted to share that because I think for those people out there, go ahead.
No, please.
Okay. Her response was, she said that, first of all, with his legal background, first of all, and being a senator for the years he's been a senator, she said, I guarantee he has read more briefs than 95% of the population and the rest of us. So he not only is well-versed and well aware of what is required of his job and all the rest and her work, he's done his homework, all of that. But she also added, remember that which they do, this is part of the process when you have a judge put forth a potential for the Supreme Court, they've had their private meetings with her. So she said he likely has had most, if not all, of his questions answered. So he knowledgeably used his time in a way to bring some positive spirit. And he certainly brought a beautiful spirit to the proceedings, considering, as I said at the beginning, she's not a defendant.
That's right. Say it for the people in the back.
So I loved her point. I love that she made that point. But he was just necessary. Go ahead.
And that is a perfect point, because that brings us full circle back to what you said in the very beginning. We are a collectivist people. Yes. I take care of you, you take care of me. And that's what we saw. We saw a cooperative situation where he said, you need a little bit of uplifting. And that was the one time that we saw a reaction from her, because tears came down. And as you said, we are all emotional people. We can have those moments where we can shed those emotions. The trick of it is knowing when and how to do it productively.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Angie, for coming on and breaking all of this down for us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love coming on here.
No problem. Thank you for being here. Okay, so now tell us where we can find you. Tell us what classes you have coming up, your music, your book, because we're prioritizing the necessary.
The necessary, yes. Thank you for asking. Well, this is a new T-shirt from A.M. May and Associates Incorporated, my company with my sister, Michelle Ann May. We are a counseling, consulting, and coaching company. And for a lot of our coaching clients, we do personal, professional, creative coaching for creative professionals, and also doctoral coaching that I offer to those considering going into a doctorate program of some kind. Doesn't have to be psychology, any kind of doctorate program, as well as those who are in their doctorate program. So for our coaching clients, we often, we have different quotes. So this is our first line we have T-shirts and a few other items that you can get, prioritize the necessary. And it just happens to be green. And this is the end of Irish, the month that we celebrate St. Patrick's Day. It just happens to be. But you can get this and our other A.M. May and Associates Incorporated products from Cafe Press. So you can go to cafepress.com/A.M.MAY, ampersand, the symbol for and, Associates, Inc. No other periods for the rest of that. So that's what this is for. As I mentioned, we have coaching and consulting that we do ongoing, and the counseling. My sister offers counseling under our company. I offer consulting to companies under our company, and both of us do coaching. So you can find us at amaassociates.com to find out more about our company and our background. You can follow us on the social medias. So we're on Facebook. We are on Instagram as well. Right now, since we spoke last, I think I finished. Yes, I did. Since we spoke last, I finished my first incarnation of my Black men's stress management group. So went very, very well, very, very well. And so I'm very excited about doing that more often because it's just not out there. And of course, as people are finding out that I do have this coaching group specifically for Black men to help them recognize and deal with stress, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, spiritually as well. More people are asking, when are you going to do the next one? So that's really cool. So I've been doing more radio and a little bit of TV and all that to put the word out. So I will be doing the next cohort coming up in May. So we'll be on again before. Oh, well.
Yes.
Let's not.
You will.
Anyway, but yes, I'll be offering it's once a week via Zoom platform. So it's virtual. Once a week, we're doing it on Tuesdays, Tuesday in the early part of the evening. So look on the social medias, Facebook and Instagram for more information about that. I'll start marketing for that in April. For me personally, same thing. You can find me on my personal page, Facebook. Come see me there. You can follow me on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, all Angela Celeste May. What else is going on? Well, musically, I continue to teach music. I've been saying that I've been writing, so I've got several songs. I'm writing new stuff, so I'm very excited about that. And I usually do recording and performing and stuff in the warmer months. Mm-hmm. So I may have some stuff coming up. So I'm excited about that. I'm planning for my next album or EP. We'll see which one it is. And I continue to teach music also at Marygrove College Conservancy in the Metro Detroit area. You can find me at reverbnation.com/Angela Celeste May. You can see my site there for my music. I have 2 albums out there, both on there, as well as you can go to iTunes and CD Baby and to find me. All Dr. Angela Celeste May, so I'm easy to find. My book is Freedom. Wait, take the papers out. Freedom. This is my book. Freedom. What is the experience? There it is. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? I'm very proud of it. I continue to get wonderful feedback. Sorry, I'm like dropping papers. Wonderful feedback on the book. People have found it not only instructive because I interviewed a group of people and they shared with me in the interview. I did the research with them, people from all different backgrounds, and talked about their journeys from being stuck in some manner in their lives, whether it's emotionally or in their career or self-esteem, whatever it may be, through to their process for becoming free from that. And from those wonderful interviews and just spending time with those folks, there were some major themes that come out of that tend to be rather universal. So there are 7 main themes that came out of that. What people say about the book is not only are the themes helpful, but it's written even though it was for my master's thesis originally, it's very reader friendly. So it's a very, it's a qualitative research. So it's storytelling. And so I encourage you to check that out. You can get that on Amazon. You as an author, isn't it amazing how you'll find your book in places you just never heard of before?
Yes. So
it's on Scribd. I think Scribd. It's like a lot of different places out there. One place I taught at the University of Phoenix for a number of years, undergrad and grad in their social sciences department. And I was a dissertation chair also in their School for Advanced Studies 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I'm no longer teaching at University of Phoenix, but I just found out that the book is on their site of like literature books and other books for the education, which is lovely. Yeah, I just found that out. So University of Phoenix .edu, I believe, or .com. Okay. So I encourage people to get the book. What else is going on? What else?
You have so much, Dr.
I got so much. I'm blessed. I'm very, very blessed. I continue to teach in the social psychology department at Wayne County Community College District here in Metro Detroit. And I'm doing a dual enrollment course right now. So I'm teaching some lovely high schoolers that are doing great. They're doing great. And I continue to be involved in the Metro Detroit chapter of the Association of Black Psychologists. And have attended my first meeting as a trustee of the Michigan Health Council. So I'm enjoying life and working out. I gotta show you.
I see. Look at that. And staying poised mentally.
Yeah, staying poised. Staying poised, watching my stress.
Yes, that's
watching
right.
my stress level and all of that. So yes, things are going very well. I'm very, very blessed and thankful, and love meeting new people and stuff. So I'm about to start my campaign. Actually, I'm about to start a campaign. It's a real short one for. I'm going to do like a 3-hour little workshop seminar, and it's for a couple of aspects of the doctoral process, regardless of the program that you're going into, regardless of the field, that they don't necessarily tell you about in the doctoral programs. So that'll be coming up. Let me see. I think it's the second Saturday in April, but go to my Facebook page and in a couple of days and you'll see. You'll see the information. Yes, I'll start putting it out next week Monday.
Okay.
Yes, like advertisement.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Angie, for coming on the Kim B. Davis Show and always giving us so much information that we can learn from and relate it back to ourselves. We so appreciate you. We look forward to seeing you again next month in April with another exciting topic.
Excellent.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Kim B. Davis Show. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, everywhere on social media, and it's Kimberly Batchelor Davis. Batchelor is spelled BATCHELOR. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can listen to this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google. We are on a new platform called Wisdom, which is an app, and you can find us on there. We're also on Clubhouse, so stay tuned for some new exciting things that are going to be coming out from the Kim B. Davis Show. I hope to see you guys on our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.